welcome back to another episode.
Yeah. Are you recording?
I'm recording, yeah.
Oh, you're recording.
Yes. Fine.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome back to another episode of the Sisterhood of the Traveling Mgowo virtual episode. There's no getting used to this.
Not getting used to it. Locked down, go. We're out here.
Going through a lot. Yeah. I don't know. Like Misho's looking very presentable, supporting Black business in a rich Misi, and I'm serving. I just woke up.
Listen, the plan is to, because I'm on leave, and the plan is to kind of try my best to not be like in pajamas the whole day and like, you know, that whole thing that I'm used to. Like I've been doing that the whole time, and yeah, I'm like trying to take a walk at some point, but you know what, things are getting lit now.
Very lit. You know, I'm gonna go for a jog.
Yeah, Joburg is now, I want to consider that as well, just to jog around the complex and see how I feel. But just with Joburg sort of, or Gauteng kind of being announced as the new epicenter, it's just like, God.
A lot is going on.
And when I go on my walk by the park, like people just aren't wearing masks and they're there with their families and they aren't wearing masks either. It's like, you know, guys, like you don't have to smell the air right now. It's okay. You know, but yeah, no, it's lit. How are you doing?
I'm all right. Like the ups and the downs, obviously, but I'm feeling optimistic today. I think it's because the sun is out and I'm sitting outside of the bedroom. Like I've been spending way too much time in my room, and it's starting to fuck with me. And also just like the theme for this month for the podcast is winter woes, because we know a lot of people suffer from SAD, and things just get way worse during the winter months, and like it depends on what season affects you the most. And it so happens for me that this is like when things are really tough. So I'm just going through it right now, but at least I'm aware. So I'm grateful for that, for the awareness and for the ability to do something about it. But yeah, that's me. Today's episode is based on that, and we're just going to discuss how we realized we were depressed and how we just I think not enough conversations are had about the realization itself and the journey to that realization, because it's a very tough thing to get to, and it's very difficult to identify when you're actually slipping into an episode itself. So yeah, that's how I feel, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Dope. No, I think it's a great topic, because I too you know, experienced winter woes. Like, I think this year is a bit different because this whole year has been a woe. There are people talking out there.
I can't hear them.
But yeah. Okay, cool. But yeah, I mean, it feels like this year is different because I've been within woes the whole year. And so it doesn't, I'm not necessarily feeling that sort of dip when it gets colder and colder. And so yeah, like it's definitely, I mean, I feel different at the moment. Usually around this time I'm like going through it. But you know, it's my, but we'll get to that later. So let's start. When did you discover?
I don't know, like I think looking back, I'm like, damn, even in high school, I was fucking depressed. Like I like, no, that wasn't normal. Like I look back and I'm like, and not normal in the sense that I'm othering depression. I'm saying it wasn't normal in the sense that it wasn't just teenage angst. It wasn't just teenage growing pains. It like there was something above me that I should have gotten help for. And I didn't have the language to articulate it. And I think the adults around me, wow, my dog is busy chasing a fly. Okay. I think the adults around me didn't 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 do anything about it, but it's also because they too were and are actually like depressed, and they just
Yeah.
didn't have the tools to do anything. So
Yeah.
it was even but the first time that I actually was diagnosed was because of grief, like after my mom died, which is weird because my entire varsity experience I was extremely depressed as well. I remember like in first year I'd just be so depressed, especially in the winter months. Like
Oh.
I
Yeah,
would
in
get on
Cape
a
Town,
I would get on a
the
jammy.
winter.
Like it's wet, it's dark,
Yeah.
you're alone in a new place. Like, yeah, you've got flatmates or like res mates, and you guys laugh about silly shit every now and then, but you're so alone for the first time ever in your life. And I used to wake up early in the morning to go to campus, shower, moisturize, very important, get dressed, and take a jammy from my res. And from my res, the jammy would go to lower campus, and then from lower campus, it would go to upper campus. But I would get to lower campus and I would get off the jammy and like walk to the other side to catch a jammy to go back to res, get in bed and just chill in bed and tweet shit like the whole time. And it was just like so weird to finally be in therapy and reflect on those moments and actually realize that shit, I was actually dealing with something that I could have gotten help for. I didn't have to be so alone in all of these realizations, and I didn't have to be alone in everything that I was feeling. But yeah, for the first time that I got diagnosed was after my mom died, and I went to therapy because I was like, I'm not going to be able to deal with this at all. Like it rocked me on another level, and I was going to be doing my final year. So then I was like, okay, no, I need to go to therapy. I need to just speak to someone about this because
Yeah.
this is something else. Like I knew it was going to happen, but I don't know, man. It just like, you know, when something's gonna happen and then it happens and you still hurt. It was
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So that's the first time that I got diagnosed, and that's when I fully became aware of like, oh shit, this is what depression is, and this is what it does to you. I went
Yeah.
on meds for anxiety, um, very briefly, because for me it wasn't like, she didn't say that it's like, okay, there's a chemical imbalance, blah 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 blah. It was basically like, okay, this right here right now is grief induced, and
Yeah.
like it's gonna come and go. It's gonna be with you for the longest time. It might just only be with you for like the 6 months, and you might heal in a certain way or whatever. So it was nice to know that like the sadness that I would experience was because of this or that. Even because sometimes
Yeah.
depression doesn't show up as sadness, and that's what like I would experience a lot of times. Sometimes I
Yeah.
just feel like very stagnant, very unproductive, just putting things off, not doing them, and just like beating myself up about it and being like, why haven't I done this? Like, why?
And it's like a counterproductive like cycle because
Yes,
you know
yes,
being procrastination because you're depressed, but you're also beating yourself up because you're depressed because you're
yes.
procrastinating. So it's like, how do you get out of that? Just getting out of that is also just a battle in and of itself. Um, but yeah, for me, so what you said about there sort of being an air of familiarity, well, rather let me say there was a before I get to the when, there was sort of an air of familiarity when I realized that, oh, I am depressed, or when I was told that I was depressed, because it was like, this is something I've known essentially my whole life.
Yes, yes. And like this feeling has been something I've carried with me for so long that I just thought this is who I am. Like, I don't know how to explain
Yeah.
it.
Yes, exactly. It was like, oh, so it actually, yeah, I'll get to that. But so I discovered, well, I figured there was something wrong in 2013. I was doing my second year, and I had just started on birth control pills, as well
Oof,
as
that's another. Oof.
and as well as Roaccutane as well. So that was just a bad combination. Even though like my doctor did his best, my dermatologist, he really did his best. The skin treatment, he made sure that it was like I was taking 3 a week. Usually people take every day, but I was taking 3 a week, and it was a small dosage, over quite a long period of time. Because he knew sort of the effect. But I then realized, 2013 was not a good year, because literally during that time when I had started birth control and the skin treatment, I was essentially doing nothing. Like I went from 2012, first day I was doing the most. I was out and about, on purpose. I was like,
And
I'm going to party at the
you
store.
get used to nothingness. You get so used to just doing nothing, just waking up and
Exactly. And so when I started that treatment, I then realized, I wasn't going anywhere. Like I wasn't even going to class. Like I didn't want to go to class. People barely saw me. I was always in my room, on the internet, on Tumblr or Twitter or YouTube, I mean, that went on for almost like half the year. And 2013 the year I failed essentially everything. It was 2014. That was just I didn't fail everything, but like I failed most of my subjects. But yeah, that's when I myself had realized it. Like I had realized it for myself. I was like, no man, I was reading up on it, and I was like, this feels very familiar. Obviously it was induced, sort of switched up a notch by the hormone treatment and whatnot. And then it was in 2015, I had an accident, and so before that, actually, from 2013 onwards was when I actually had full on developed anxiety. Um, it was only diagnosed in 2015. But I was dealing with anxiety, essentially sort of undiagnosed, and I didn't know what the hell to do with it. Essentially from like 2013 to about mid to towards the last quarter or the third quarter of 2015. And yeah, like I was diagnosed in 2015. I had an accident, and I had like huge anxiety. Like I didn't want to go anywhere. Whenever I was in a taxi or a car or an Uber, I was just like going through the most. And so I went to the campus psychologist, and yeah, they were just like, this looks sort of like PTSD, some depression in there, some anxiety all up in there. And then yeah, like I think just a series of events just kind of happened in 2015. 2015 also came with Fees Must Fall, so that was just, and then that didn't help at all. Like, listen, Fees Must Fall just kind of, and also just sort of the uncertainty around my academic career and just my career as a whole. And then moving to Pretoria in 2016, then I feel like it just got worse, because I wasn't required to go to class all the time. I mean, we only had 8 classes a semester. So I would just be in my apartment essentially like all the time, because my friends would be going to class every day. They had daily classes. And so I was in my apartment the whole time. Once again, that just didn't help at all. And I really got worse. I really, really got worse. Got worse 2016. 2017 was like the peak. Like that was like the peak. So typically with all my, well, I mean, in 2015 when I did go for psychology, when I went to go see the psychologist for the first time, they didn't feel the need to sort of take me to a psychiatrist and all of that. They were like, I think it's something that can be helped with therapy and whatnot. So I was like, okay. I think the closest I had come to essentially being admitted was 2017. because a lot happened in 2017. 2017 was not a good year. I'm not even gonna lie. And at that point, like there was a lot of like, sort of suicide ideation and whatnot. And that's when I had to be like, and I had just started a new job. And so before that, I mean, I wasn't earning enough to sort of go there on my own. And I didn't feel safe enough to go to my parents and say, I'm feeling like this. I mean, in 2015, it was a little bit better because they were like, they understood, okay, it's probably trauma.
Students, yeah.
So they were also encouraging. They were like, speak to someone, find a counselor and whatnot. And as much as, we had medical aid and whatnot, which is a privilege, I still didn't feel safe enough to use those resources to go to therapy in 2016 and 2017. And so in 2017, when I got a job, I then decided, out of pocket, I'm just going to have to, because it was really bad, I'm just going to have to fund this myself. Like, it doesn't matter if I go broke. And even then, I wasn't earning enough to be able to cough out. At the time, I had to go weekly because it was just that bad. She needed to sort of evaluate me properly before sort of taking me to a psychiatrist. And so, like it's been a long road. Like, I think the most jarring thing for me when it comes to discovering that I was depressed, not necessarily that I had depression disorder, but that I was depressed, because we do want to make that distinction as well. The reason why we didn't have an expert here is because we don't want to talk down on people who, like us, at some point did not have
who had not been diagnosed.
Exactly, who had not been diagnosed due to access, due to resources, etc. Because those were our struggles as well. I mean, therapy is really expensive, guys. I mean, I'm
like when I was going weekly, 2015, it was like $700 or $800 per session, and like, what the fuck? I don't even want to think of how much it is right now.
Like, I mean, it's around nine, depending on who you go to. Some people are like, they understand the target market, so they keep it at like 9-8, and then some people are just like, wait,
like a psychiatrist. Like a psychiatrist, I remember back then was like 1.2 in Cape Town.
That's wild. But I think the most jarring thing about my discovery, in terms of like, discovering when when I became depressed, was really just an air of familiarity. I remember telling my therapist at some point as well, like, there's nothing new about this feeling, like, at all. It just so happens that, like, maybe I have less pressure to perform okayness. When you're living in the house, when you're living at home, it's the four of you.
Yes.
But I realized I kind of had those behaviors. I mean, I've always believed I was reclusive, and sure enough, it's part of my personality. But what part of that was also depression? Like, I those are kind of the things that I sort of ask myself, why I wonder often.
Like, it's so strange, because I like grew up with everyone in my family believing that I was extremely quiet, extremely timid, like don't like people. And I've only come into myself in the last like 5 or 6 years, where it's been like, no, I'm actually a very social person, enjoy people a lot. Like, and I could actually even describe myself as almost being bubbly. And if you were to ask like people who've known me for a long time, they don't know that person. And it's like, that's how much I was depressed at the time. And that's how much like work has had to go into truly becoming myself, and not like overcoming, but just accepting the certain feelings that I have and the way that my mind works at times, and learning how to coexist with that in a healthy way, so that it doesn't govern like my personality or the way that I interact with other people, the way that it has in the past. Because it's like, as you're saying, for the longest time you had to like perform this okayness, that makes other people feel comfortable, to the point where you take away from who you are, or you take away from dealing with what you're going through. And I think that it's very important to have people around you who when you can create the spaces that you occupy, because a lot of people aren't in a position to do that. But when you can, it's important to have people who will understand that there are days where you cannot be that person they expect, or that person they know every single other day.
I felt it was much easier to just sit in my not okayness when I was in varsity, because I didn't have to anybody.
You can literally be in your feelings.
Literally be in my feelings without somebody asking me all the time, what's wrong with you? Oh, what's going on with her? So it really has just been realizing that there was just something very familiar about this, just kind of made me question a lot about my personality. And I mean, at some point I did go through an identity crisis. I go through those often, but it's definitely getting a bit better, because like these things are the way we frame our thinking around depression is like, and just not just depression, but also introversion and just being a recluse is just very like, some like it seems like it's something you overcome. And there's part of me that doesn't believe, not necessarily depression. I mean, depression, I don't think you overcome it. You live with it. You learn to live with it.
Coexist in a healthy way. I think.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So I think, that I don't know if it's, like those are things I'm grappling with. Like, is my personality as a result of, the depression, or is it just who I've become and I need to be okay with that? So those are kind of the thoughts that come into my mind as well, because
it's very interesting, because when I think of it, I'm like, I've had a big significant change in terms of my personality from when I was a child, when I was a teen, to who I am now. And it's like, I just feel that the spaces I've come to belong to, and the groups that I've come to belong to, and even my family over the years has obviously changed significantly, have become much safer for me to truly be who feels most natural to me. And it doesn't necessarily mean that like I now have, like I always say to people, I have the smallest personality in my family. Like they still fucking overwhelming. And it's like, it's just who I am now and who I present myself as might be very different in 5 years' time, but it will still be what is most comfortable to me in the spaces that I'm in, or in the spaces that I feel safest in. And I don't know, I don't think I like overcame my introversion, or like I stopped being shy. Like there's still spaces that I'm in where I'm like, okay, here I can't speak yet. I like it feels most natural to be shy in them. And then there's spaces where it just feels most natural to be bubbly and chatty in. And I think just looking at like specifically my family and how the dynamic has changed over the years, and how we've become like more smaller and more like just immediate family, it just feels so much safer to be without performance, because all these other dynamics have been stripped away. And I think that when you look at other places, like spaces like maybe work, it's like it's inevitable that there will be certain triggers, because there's so many different people, so many different dynamics, that there's no way that the ways we've been conditioned to deal with feeling like smaller, not feeling as safe, will force you to go back into like an introversion of some sort or whatever. Like I think it's the personality thing, and how depression like molds it is very, very interesting, because it's like, for me it's become a safety thing.
Exactly. No, it's something that I'm like, that I think about often. And most times I get to sort of the conclusion that you just spoke about, especially because I've found a sort of group of friends that get it, and also my family gets it now, and we all just kind of it's becomes it's the new territories where I'm like,
yes, it's
okay,
difficult to navigate new territories because it becomes easier to fall back on, like, even though you might know it's not the healthiest version of yourself, it becomes easier to
yeah,
fall back on it because you know that there's a level of protection that comes with
exactly,
presenting yourself in a certain way.
yeah.
Ay, ay,
Um,
ay.
Yeah, no, it's a struggle. It's real. I mean, I'm back in therapy. I mean, with the lockdown and everything, because once again, we
That's
do want to
another
discuss
layer.
this, the backdrop of the lockdown. Like, I had told myself before the lockdown. So the lockdown had been announced, and I was like, I know, I know. After the 21 days, I'm going to need therapy. Well, it wasn't 21 days. It's now like what, 150?
100
I
and
have no
something,
idea.
yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, even in this situation, I was like, I know this is completely like nobody planned for this, man. Like, nobody knew
It's
this was gonna happen.
unnatural. It's unnatural.
And
We
natural.
cannot
So
rationalize it.
I knew that there was just no ways I was gonna be able to sort of go about this on my own. And I mean, thankfully, I'm now able to. I mean, thank goodness for medical. They almost didn't cover me. They were like, oh. But thankfully, my my psychologist fought. So yeah, like I've been now it's bi-weekly. But before I was going for a month. I was going every week because it was hectic, and also just like transitioning as well, like transitioning during this time, while also dealing with depression. I mean, I'd been essentially, I mean, last year I was on medication, um, especially because I was not sleeping. So what was happening is, like you're working, then you're studying, and then a sort of off switch. And so what was happening was that because there was no off switch, I wasn't getting enough sleep, which was making me depressed, or which triggered, episodes. And so, yeah, like I had been on meds essentially from like last year until sometime this year, maybe March, April. I'm off them now because I guess I feel fine. Um, but also, last year I had gone on these nerve. So they doctors use antidepressants for neuropathic pain as well. So I'd had that, which was caused by stress, which was caused by like life.
Dude,
And
IBS
so
and depression and
no,
anxiety.
exactly. And so I had neuropathic chest pain, and imagine that's chest pain for real. um, but so those meds made me worse. In terms of like mental health. Like I was a wreck. Like I was a mess. So I had to get off them in March, and obviously things are much better now. But it's things like that. And I mean, and then going into a lockdown also, guys. It's been a journey and a half.
Like what you're talking about is actually wild because I just thought about like the physical pain that you can sometimes experience, and you just brush it off as physical pain and you don't tie it to what's happening mentally. Because for the longest time I used to belch. Like it started 2014. I just, like, it was so fucking embarrassing, and I went to doctors multiple times. And one of the things that we don't discuss is like how dishonest we can be when we go to the doctor or when we go to therapy. So I just
Yeah.
I just like be like, I'm burping, I don't know why, and I'm just always burping. And they'd ask me like, okay, they'd ask me things that back then, now I realize, spoke to like the symptoms of IBS and all of that, and I'd just be like, no, I just burp, and I don't know if I was conscious of the fact that I was like denying that my gut was speaking to me in that way. And it was only last year, because I accepted that, okay, I've got gut issues, and I'll just take a probiotic and pray for the best and avoid certain foods and all of that. And then last year I got diagnosed with IBS, but it was triggered because of like an abusive situation at work. And it was just so abusive that I literally got physically ill. And it triggered my depression and anxiety in another way. And it's so wild that I was actually thinking about it. I got used to the discomfort of like being bloated, burping all the time, and I was like, or like feeling sick after eating certain things, and it's just like, this is just a part of my life, like this is just who I am. And it was only like last year when the doctor made the link between IBS and what was happening emotionally, that I realized that, fuck, this thing, like I've seen people speak about it, but it's now happening to me. And I'm like, this extends beyond just mentally, like it can rock your entire body. And it's wild that I'm only recovering from that, like now, like my IBS, like I've when I was in high school, I was just told, no, you've got stomach ulcers, so avoid certain things, da 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 da. But now, like the IBS, it was at its peak for like a good year. And like this last 2 weeks have been the only time that I've been feeling like okay. And that is wild to me. Like even once you've processed everything mentally and you've unpacked it for yourself, your body can take so much longer to like recover and get back to operating fully.
Definitely. Like it's so wild, because then we discover the new ways in which in the new ways in which we're depressed, or in the new ways in which depression shows itself every year or every other year or whatever. Literally, when I think about it over the years, literally it's just been one thing or the other, or one thing or the other, one thing.
Yes.
And so it's really just, and I mean, like I really, this lockdown also really didn't help, man.
But I think that deserves an episode on its own. Because there've been so many realizations, and also this lockdown coinciding with winter.
Yes, we'll definitely talk about the realizations that have come with sort of this journey of ours. But I mean, just quickly, like the easiest one that I discovered was that even though depression wants you to stay inside, you shouldn't all the time. So that was probably the biggest game changer for me.
It's weird because you look at like our grandparents and our parents, a lot of them don't have the language, but small things like opening the windows, opening the curtains, getting some sun, like not being in bed the whole day, those things make such a big difference. But the way that they would communicate them, because they, it was just like, don't fucking shout at me.
For us in the winter, it's always like, like, we're going to sit in the sun, essentially. And it's like, I do that now because I know, that if I don't, like,
it's gonna
I'm not gonna feel good. Yeah, exactly. So it's like they've been new, it's just the language just wasn't there.
And the way that they communicated is, it could do with a little bit of fixing, minus the frustration.
Don't shout at me, don't come wake me up in my room, flicking the covers and just violently opening the curtains.
Yes.
But yeah, guys, we've got some really exciting stuff coming up. We definitely want to continue these chats around sort of seasonal affective disorder. I know a lot of us are going through winter blues and winter woes. And so let's keep the conversation going. Yeah, what do you want to say? What do you want the people to tell us?
I'm just like, it's not even about what I want people to tell us. I'm praying that people have safe spaces in their lives and people that they can speak to when they're not feeling okay. And um, just want people
That
to
helps
know
a
that
lot.
it's not, yeah, it's a lot to verbalize things and to give things words. Um,
Yeah,
but one thing you should always know is that it's not, yes, it's big. Yes, it's eating at you. Yes, you feel like you're drowning or it's so heavy, but there are people who will help like lessen your load.
yeah,
Once there's
no,
another
exactly.
person, there's another perspective, it becomes
Yeah,
less heavy. If you don't trust your parents, there are friends. If you don't trust your friends, there are numbers that you can call.
yeah,
There's always someone who is there, and
yeah,
just saying things sometimes
yeah.
helps you feel lighter. Just
True.
hearing another
A
person.
podcast as well. There are professionals who talk about
Yes,
these
there
things
are
as well.
professionals. Like, it's
So
okay
we'll
to be
try
feeling
to
like this.
post that stuff. Yeah,
It's okay to be feeling like this. Like, it's okay. It don't carry any guilt or any shame. Like, we feel
yeah,
like this. We're people just like you. There are other people in the world who feel like you feel, and there are people who have
yeah,
gotten help for feeling like you feel. So
yeah. It
don't
doesn't
beat
feel like that
yourself
in the moment.
up. It
We know
doesn't feel
that
like
as
that
well.
at
Like it doesn't feel like
all.
when
At
you
all,
are just
dude.
like I'm alone. Oh, shit, like nobody understands me. Trust me,
I
there are people
promise
who do
you, like,
understand.
everything that you're going through, somebody has thought of it
Mm,
in some way. Like, I
that-
promise you, and somebody has thought of how to deal with it. So the
yeah,
information is there.
yeah.
Just give yourself a fighting chance to try get access to it. Like, one
Yeah, and
one
it's
bite at
coming
a
from
time.
me. Like this is coming from me. I struggle with asking for help, like even from my own friends. So, but I'm telling you that it helps. It really, really does help. The times when I decided to put my pride aside and whatever else aside, and just sort of that fear of being incredibly vulnerable aside, like it really saved my life. So, yes, guys,
Speak.
we are gonna continue these talks. Speak. We've got some exciting things coming up over the next couple of months. We're very excited. Um, but yeah, stay safe, guys. Wear your masks, please.
Hey, those things
Please
make.
wear your mask.
Eesh. Yeah, wear your
Like
mask
it's
though.
yes,
That shit is
it's not comfortable.
nasty. They need to develop like better, they need to make masks. I don't know how the fuck they're gonna do it. But because the surgical
So I
ones,
guess that the N95 ones are
yeah,
are,
ones you can wear
are
for a
good.
long time. Yeah, they need
Yeah,
to, yeah.
N95, and isn't it that you can reuse it? An N95 because it's
Mm,
got that
mm.
oxygen
Yes, I
oxygen
need to get
filter
one
thing.
of those. Because also, I think
Yeah.
those probably don't fog up your glasses. Because I have that
Yes.
issue as
Yeah.
well. So, like, I
Yeah.
have
I
to
think the
walk,
only
walk,
problem with
walk, and then
N95 is the only problem with N95, especially in the beginning, was that there was a shortage.
a
I don't
shortage.
know
Yeah.
if that's
I hope they're mass producing now. But
yeah.
yeah, bye
Then that way,
guys.
guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Um,
listening.